So today we're going to talk about arrays. So we'll start with a programming problem, just to give you an idea of why we need such a beast, and then we'll discuss what the beast is. Let's say you want to have the user enter a line of text, and then we want to do that while the line of text is not equal to an empty string. Okay, so when they enter an empty string, we want them to quit. And then we might, once we're done with that, we want to print out all the lines in reverse order. All right? So that's the problem statement. How do we do that? Well, we can actually write some things here, and we can start to think about it with what you know now. We can have a while loop. We can say line equals nothing. This is kind of like the menu we did yesterday. While line is not equal to what? What would I check against? Empty string. Okay, good. Then I want to get a line from the user and print and do something with it, right? So first of all, we have to prompt them. We're going to say enter a line blank to quit, something like that. And then we're going to store something in line.gets, right? We're going to get the value, we're going to chomp it. Let's chomp it too. Otherwise this will never finish. All right? So let's run this and see what happens. We need to kind of print out the line at the end. That's what we got. We got an error. Private method gets for nothing string. Well, that was stupid. I don't call the gets on the line. I just call gets by itself. All right, enter a line. This is line 1. This is line 2. Hit an enter, and it quits. And what did it print at the last? It did print something, but what? An empty string, right? It printed out the line. At this point, line was equal to an empty string, so it quits. So then we're printing out the line at the end, right? We'll change that to a puts, doesn't matter. So I have to, in order to print these lines, I have to store these lines somewhere in my code, right? So I'm going to need a variable for this line. So let's say, let's have a storage 1 is nothing. And when I get the line, I'm going to copy that into my storage location. So now whatever well, it's in the wrong place. And now I have a variable, and at the end I might be able to print my storage line, right? So let's run it again. And I'm going to enter a line. This is line 1. This is line 2. And quit. And I get nothing back. Why?
Because you still stored the carriage return for the last one.
Right. So it's still the same thing. I stored it in my storage 1, right? So every time this loop happens, it's storing it in the same variable name. So I might think, well, let's make a couple of these. Make a storage 2 and a storage 3 and et cetera, right? Now, the problem is the way this program is written, I have no idea ahead of time how many storage locations to keep aside to store these sentences that they're typing into the console, right? I'd have to know ahead of time exactly how many lines they're going to type so I could have a variable for each one of them.
But once they add an extra line, it throws everything off.
Right. So I'd have to stand over the guy's shoulder and say, wait, let me change my program so that I can add another one, because you're going to enter 10 and I only have 9 storage spaces. And then he comes back to you next week and says, well, I need 11, so add me some more to that. So the problem is that I can't dynamically add variables to my program in this concept. So arrays are a way to allow us to do that. It's an open-ended storage location that I can put data into different slots. And that slot holds any type of data. In Ruby, I can have numbers or strings or even other arrays inside of that slot in an array. All right? So I like to think of an array like a single column of a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet or any spreadsheet. All right? So this is, and I can't get rid of all these, so I'm going to make this really big. This is an array, we'll call it A, and it has different slots in it that I can store data in. And this actually is almost infinite. I think it goes up to 65, 536 or something. But as I add more data, these cells keep increasing, right? I can keep adding more and more data. So inside of this, I can put anything I want. I can put Dave, I can put Jones, I can put the number 12. It puts it over here. Let's put them all center so you can see that. I can put this is line 1, this is line 2, this is line 3, and so these are a way of storing data in a cell position, and then later on I can reference that. So later on I want to get the number 12 out. How in Excel would I reference the cell containing the value 12? A3, right? It has an address in this column. It has an A, that's my A array, has everything. And the third one down the list, which is this row, gives me the value that's stored in that cell is 3. Now the address of that cell is A3. What is A6? What does that hold? This is line 3. It holds what type of data type? A string that has the data. This is line 1. So the cell contains information, and I address it. I look it up in the array by this addressing scheme by looking at the row of that I want to look at. What would A sub 9 have in it? A9 have in it? Nothing. There's nothing there yet. So I could put something in A9, or I could retrieve something from A9, but it's a storage location that I can put something in and I can take something out. All right, that's the basic concept of an array. Any questions on that so far?
Can you skip spaces?
Yes, in Ruby you can. I can put something in A9 and it won't affect these two open spaces at all. Ruby is different than a lot of languages in that the cells themselves can hold anything you want. I can put a floating point number in here, and it doesn't affect the entire system. Now, in C#, and I'm not sure of Visual Basic, but C# for sure, you have to declare your array type ahead of time. You have to say, I'm going to create an array that's going to hold integers, right? And every cell in that array has to have an integer in it. I can't put a string as well. So Ruby is really nice in that respect that I don't care what's in it. I can use it to store anything I want. I don't have to declare that ahead of time. All right? Any other questions on that? Okay, that's the theory part of arrays. So let's get into some practicality.
Yeah, I said it.
Oh boy, here we go. So let's start off from blankness again. An array is just a way to store information. So we can create a blank array by establishing a variable name to store that in. So if I want to match my Excel spreadsheet, I might call my array A. You can call it whatever you want. I can call it Dave if I want. But just like a variable, I can assign a variable to something to a variable, and a blank array is established by putting two square brackets together. That's an array now. A is an array type. It holds array type data, and I can do array type stuff with it. So if I look at my IRB, if I do that in IRB, I can say A equals an empty array, and if I look at A now, all it gives me back is an empty array. The two square brackets denote an array, all right? So I can say what type of data is stored in there. I can look at the class of this variable. And the class of that variable A is an array. Just like the class of this is what? What do you think that? It's a string. All right? How about this? It's actually a fixed num, which is an integer. Ruby has a couple of different classes in there that are real close. How about 10.2.class? What do you think that's going to be? A float, right? It's going to be a floating point number, a float. And if I just look at a blank array.class, that's going to be an array, right? So I can establish a variable to start looking up addresses in that column. You think of these two brackets as a column in Excel. I think that'll help you out a little bit. So I can store something in it by using the address of the location where I want to put something. Now my variable becomes variable. My variable can have additional locations inside of this array, and I can put anything I want in there. I can put a 0, array sub, let's start with 1, equals Dave. All right? So if I do that in IRB, I could say A sub 0 or 1 equals the string Dave. And now when I print out my A array, it gives me two values. This is an array, square brackets, containing two cells. And in programming languages, we always start with 0. And this is for legacy purposes, how arrays were first created to address memory. So A sub 0 was the first position of the first byte in memory that we're going to look at. So that's why programmers tend to be off by 1 when they count all the time, because we count from 0 instead of 1. So since I never defined A sub 0, the value, Ruby says, oh, you don't have anything there, I'm going to just put a nil. That means there's nothing there. No value is stored in that. But in my second position, which is A sub 1, I have the string Dave. So that's just like my Excel spreadsheet. I put A sub 1, my address, I put the string Dave in there. All right, so I can add some more. I could say A sub 2 is Jones. I could say A sub 3 is, I'm going to assign it 12. That means I'm putting the value on the right-hand side into the cell position that's addressed by A sub 3, like an Excel spreadsheet. I'm putting it into that cell. A sub 4 equals, this is line 1. All right, so now if I print out my A array, I see all these data points in here. Each one is a cell position. A sub 0, A sub 1, A sub 2, A sub 3, A sub 4. All right? So if I were to print out the value of A sub 3, what am I going to get back? Which is it, 12 or Jones? Who say 12? Who say Jones? Now this is the problem with counting but from 0. So we count from 0. This is 0, 1, 2, 3. So A sub 3 is going to be 12. Yay. So A sub 2 would be the Jones, the string Jones. Everybody see that? We're addressing a slot in this column on the spreadsheet. Think of it that way.
The nil is not actually taking up a space.
It is taking up a space, but it has nothing in that cell. It is actually taking up memory to hold nothing. Right. That's true. So if I printed out A sub 0, I get a nil back. I get nothing back. All right. Any questions on that? All right. So there are an array type has all kinds of methods that I can operate on. I can type a.methods, and it gives me all of these methods that I can execute on an array. Look at all these guys. Hundreds of them. I can say a.methods.count, and there are 167 methods that I can operate on an array type of object. So an array is a type of object in Ruby. Let's look at string. Let's see. String.methods.count gives me 162 different methods that I can have on here. So what I'm using is the count method on an array object. I can say a sub count. So how many values do you think is in my A? All right, so let's say a.count. I get 5. All right, remember the 0 again. That actually takes up a position. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, which is 5 values. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, if you count on your hand. So that's 5 elements, 5 cells in my array. All right, are we comfortable with that so far? So here I'm assigning value out. If I wanted to print that value back out to the screen, how do you think I would print the Dave value? Very good. Puts A sub 1. Okay, so let's run this. And it prints Dave. The value stored in that cell is what gets printed. I'm addressing that cell and saying, give me the data out of that cell and do something with it. All right, let's say I can also establish, let's say A sub 2 is 12. What do you think this statement will do? Let's say, how would I add 1 to the number 12 and put it back into my cell addressed by A2? How would I add 1 to A2 and put it back into A2? Oh, I want to look up what the value is in there and add it back in. So what is the current value of A2?
2 plus equal A2.
Yes, I could do that. A2, no, not quite plus equals A2. It would be A2 plus 1. All right? So the value, this is looking up the value. This is saying, tell me what the data is in A2 and give that back to me. And that's what type of data now? A2 is what data type? Integer, okay? And I can add 1 to that. So it does all of this first. That will now equal 13. And the 13 now gets stuffed back into the address of A2, all right? So then if I put my A sub 2, I should get 13 out at the end. Yay, I got 13. All right, so I can get a data out. I can put a data back in to those cell positions, just depending on which side of the equal sign I'm on. Yeah, I could do this as a plus equals 1. Same thing. I'm adding 1 to the value of A2, sorry, and putting it back into A2. So that's the same as All right, I think that's enough for today. We'll do more arrays tomorrow. And we'll show you how to use while loops with arrays, and that's where it gets all kinds of fun. All right? So that's it. Any questions?